Now let me go over point of some point of my talk. Tibetan language as a medium of instruction in the science. My experience as a student, I attended the primary school in 1975, which was founded by the PRC government in 1952. And that time in education system in Tibet, back to Tibet, most in this big city and the township level, there's like two different classrooms, which was like Tibetan classroom and the Chinese classroom. And but more like rural area, they don't have those like two different type of classrooms, like a Tibetan classroom and a Chinese, always only a Tibetan classroom. But in those classrooms, you have to teach all the courses in Chinese language. But I learned all my classes in Tibetan language during my 5 years primary school. The Chinese language was only offered from the 3rd grade as a subject class. During my middle school education, the Tibetan language class was only offered as a subject, and all other classes, including biology, mathematics, and other science classes, were taught in Chinese language. But with much confidence in the Tibetan language classes, I and my classmates were very enthusiastic of the Tibetan language. Besides, we also got some great scholars of the former Tibetan government officials, because after 1979, a lot of former Tibetan government official was released from the prison, and also geshes from the monastery they released from prison. So they got those the teaching position at that time. So I'm glad we got those teacher as our Tibetan language teacher. Our teacher always taught beyond the textbook, which made me very interested in learning Tibetan. Later on, I also took some private classes in Tibetan language. This made a good foundation for my mother tongue. During that time, when I and my classmates learned the science classes in Chinese language, we had great difficulty to understand the concepts of the subject and had little interest in learning these subjects. But I thank to my teachers, who were all Tibetan at that time, to make us more sense and interested in these subjects by trying very hard to explain the textbook in Tibetan language. I remember that we all had a side note in Tibetan language for the subject. Without teachers' solid effort, we gradually also became more interested in learning the subject and had a better understanding of the concept. However, because of the non-standard materials on the science subject in Tibetan language, and we had to take exam in Chinese language, because of that time we have to study all the science subject in Chinese language. But in classroom, teacher will be explained in Tibetan language. But all the exam we have to take in Chinese. Excuse me. Tibetan students' exam results were always fell much behind than the Chinese student in the same grade level. We never caught up with our peer Chinese students during my middle and high schools. By the time when I entered to the college, my Chinese level was good enough to take all the science with my Chinese classmates. I did not feel difficult fitting in the class. I caught up with my Chinese classmates quickly. In this case, I think my strong background in mother tongue language helped me the great deal. When I was in the Tibet University in late 1980s, some pilot projects on bilingual education model were introduced in Tibet. There were a few Tibetan science textbooks were published during that time. I still recall that my professor selected some of us to translate the biology teacher's menu into Tibetan language. It was supposed to be published, but I did not see it in the print yet. Before I graduated in 1990, I was assigned to do my internship as a bilingual teacher at the Lhasa Middle School. The class that I taught was one of the pilot classes to use Tibetan language as a medium of instruction biology. My translation work of the teacher's menu helped me a great deal when I taught the class. I realized it was not that difficult to teach the subject in Tibetan. Moreover, I saw my students showing great enthusiasm and interest in learning the subject in Tibetan language. Then in 1991, I became a formal biology teacher for the Lhasa Middle School. And at that time, it's a situation, as I mentioned like early in this morning, like the in TRR and the Qinghai are a little bit different. And then in Qinghai, the bilingual education, especially like Tibetan language as a module to teach in the middle school, were widely like practiced in the all the provinces in the Tibetan area. But in TRR, that time only like 3 places, which like 4 schools, they just have this pilot the project. Not all Tibetan schools have this the pilot project in the TRR. There are only 4. So I was become one of the the biology teacher in that middle school. At that time, I was assigned to teach three different biology classes of the same grade, which is the 7th grade, and one was only Chinese students class. All are the Chinese students, but I have to teach those in Chinese language on the biology. The other one is all Tibetan students, but I have to use Chinese language to teach those Tibetan language. Then the third one is the pilot the classes, project class, which I have to teach all the biology in Tibetan language to the Tibetan students. So I taught 3 different classrooms when I was in Tibet. And third class was only taught students in the pilot project of using Tibetan language as a medium of instruction. This was the only pilot class at the level teaching in Tibetan language. Here I would like to mention that these students were selected to this program by their parents and own will when they were enrolled in the middle school. That time, a lot of maybe we can talk later a little bit about that. The parents concerned about when they send these students to teach all the subjects in Tibetan, maybe they won't have a good future when they get apply for the university or getting the job in the future. So that's why these class mainly are family. The parents are strongly supportive for the kids. Also, kids wants to study all the subjects in Tibetan language.